So one of my first projects that I needed to accomplish was to get a place to hook up power for my welder. So I have a new 50 amp outlet plugged in to the side of my power box and a new 50 amp circuit breaker to turn power on and off to that, so it is protected. Let me show you the kind of struggles I went through to get that accomplished. Alright, so I've got my helping hands here that are going to help me get this job done this morning. But what I've got going on here is I'm going to try to connect up a exterior box to the back of my power panel, and I'm just realizing that this is not going to work. So here's another one of my typical quick, easy projects that turns into a big fiasco, right? So I decided I was going to add a outlet box to the outside of my power pole here for my 220 volt plug-in, you know, so I can plug in my welder and all that kind of stuff right here at the post, because I don't have any power anywhere else on the property to plug in my welder. So I figured I'll just get one of these boxes like this right here, and I'll mount it to the post right here, and I'll just run it into this knockout that's right in the back side of the power box, right? So then the first trouble that I run into is if I was to put it in through the center hole that's the right size, you can see that it doesn't line up to be able to mount it to the pole here. See how that's kind of cattywampus? And if I make it so that it's level and goes through the box straight, then it's like completely in all of the knockouts of the box on the back of the box. So then I decide, well, I can just turn this around this other way, and I can put it through this way, and I'll just make my own hole, right? So I could just do my own hole, and that's okay, that'll work, no problem. So I look on the inside of the box, and yep, I've got room on the inside of the box. I can just drill a hole back on that one corner right here, and everything will be fine. Then I decide, you know, I ought to make sure that everything will go together properly, because if I put this direction, you know, this is a square, it's got 4 corners, it's a square box. These are all inset from the corner, so it should be able to go on this way or this way or this way, no problem, right? It's got block off plates and all of that. It's got spots on the inside, I can see that, where you can drill through and mount screw holes through it. Okay, that's big, no big deal. So then I decide, okay, I can just make it and then mount it this direction. So here comes the problem. If you look at how the power cord plugs into an outlet like this ground lug that's here is the top of the plug, and the cord comes out the opposite side. So the cord was going to be hanging underneath it like this here. So if it's off to the side, that always puts a lot of stress on the box that it's mounted in. So I want to mount this direction. That's the best direction to mount the outlet. It won't mount this direction. It only mounts this direction, right? That's the only way that the screw holes go into the flange on the outlet itself. So I can't mount it this way. Well, that's all right. It's got some other screw holes here. You can mount it to the inside of this lid, right? Well, guess what? It doesn't mount to the lid in all 4 directions either. It only mounts in that same orientation, right? It only mounts this direction. Well, that would work. I can mount it to this box. I can mount this outlet to this cover, and then use these 4 screw holes and mount it to this box, right? Then I can mount that whichever direction I want. Well, if you look, it lines up with the corners this direction, but it does not line up with any of the holes this direction. So this cover can only go on in this direction or this direction, and have the screw holes that are right in the corners here go through and go into the attachment tabs on the inside of the box. So this box can only be oriented this direction or this direction. So that fiasco makes it where I can't use this box to mount it in this orientation. So now I need to find a different way to mount it, right? So now I'm looking at the side of this, and I've got another set of knockouts here, and I'm looking, the size of this outlet can fit and be put in right through this hole right here if I knock this hole out. So I'm thinking maybe I can mount this to the inside of the box and then mount this cover plate over the outside of the box right here and make that work to where the outlet is just right inside the box. And again, it looks like there's maybe enough room for this outlet to be mounted on the inside of the box here, flush this direction, inside this space right here, and be able to wire it up. Because again, the green ground is going to go up like this, so it's going to mount this direction like that, right? But then the problem becomes, if I mount through these four corners to this panel, the cover that closes over this has to have some space here. This lid fits on the outside of this panel like this, so I can't just mount this flat on there. It needs to be spaced off of this, and I need to come up with some type of a spacer. And remember, this needs to be liquid tight because this is going to get rain on it, and rain will hit this, come down, and we don't want it going inside of the outlet. So I need to come up with some spacer that can go in this space that I can silicone together and make it watertight, that will let this outlet cover stand off of the box enough to let this panel slip underneath the edge of it. So that's what I got to come up with today. All right, just to catch you up really quick, let me show you what I came up with. So as you can see, I've got the outlet on the outside, and it is set up in the proper orientation. And so what I basically did, I knocked out that biggest knockout on the inside, and I mounted my outlet on the inside of it, and sandwiched the cover through with the screws all the way through. And then I've got my ground and my neutrals going up to the neutral bus, and my two new hots going to a new circuit breaker. So now I've got 50 amp service coming out through a 50 amp plug with the neutral, two hots in the ground. So I am ready to put the cover back on this and close it up. I did leave my old circuit breaker. There is one line that was a little, I don't even know what size this is, but this is not to code because it's a 20 amp circuit breaker running through tiny wire, and this wire went over to the light that's inside of the storm shelter. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave it because I have all the rest of the wires. I'm going to leave it connected and just stuff it in here. There's plenty of room for it. But I'm ready to button this all back up, and then I will have power connection to hook up my welder to.